doctor is satisfied that the closure of the cleft in the palate is permanent.
They didn't just act. They carried studios, sold childhood back to America, and learned grown-up rules before they finished algebra. Then, in a blink, they were gone. Some vanished by choice. Some were pushed out. Some were taken by fate. And a rare few rewrote the script entirely. This isn't a nostalgia reel. It's the real reasons child stars disappear, told one life at a time. Hollywood worships the comeback, but it has no language for a clean exit or for a reinvention that happens off camera. So we're opening 15 case files, each a different path through the machine. Escapes, ejections, abrupt endings, and quiet second acts. No stage directions, no recycled intros, just fast human stories that explain why disappearing is often another word for living. Deanna Durbin. Before she could legally vote, she was carrying a studio. As a teen soprano with box office pull, Durbin's sunny musicals steadied Universal in a rough era, turning a school-age talent into a global name. While most kids grow out of a phase, she grew into a phenomenon, then faced the trap every young star meets: become a brand forever or become a person again. Durbin chose the person. At the very moment the industry expected more, she drew a line. No nostalgia tours, no engineered comeback, no endless recycling of her teenage image. She moved to a quiet village, married, and stopped performing for anyone. The headlines called it a mystery. It wasn't. It was a boundary. Her choice unsettles Hollywood because it proves vanishing can be victory. Not a fall, not a cautionary tale, a clean exit from a role she'd outgrown since girlhood. Hold that thought, because next comes a story where the disappearance wasn't chosen at all, and that contrast is the point. Brandon deWilde. He was the kid whose single plea, "Shane, come back," stamped itself onto American memory. The kind of lightning bolt moment most actors never get even once. That line could have been a cage, but Brandon kept pushing past it, taking theater roles that sharpened his instincts and film parts that let him grow into his voice and frame. You could see the shift happening in real time, the alert, soulful child settling into a grounded adult presence, not coasting on nostalgia, but building a new identity brick by brick. The transition from child name to adult career is usually a long, bruising bridge, full of near misses and typecast traps. Brandon was beating the odds. Directors trusted him with complicated beats. Audiences didn't feel like they were watching a former child star. They were watching an actor. The path ahead looked steady. More stage work, more layered characters, the kind of resume that slowly turns respect into longevity. For once, the story seemed to promise an unhurried second act. Then timing did what typecasting couldn't. On a routine drive to a performance, the story ended at 30, fast and indifferent. There was no tabloid arc to decode, no moral to hang on the wall, just a sudden stop that froze a career mid-stride. We remember him not because he fell, but because he was in the middle of rising, and the unfinished line of that ascent is what echoes long after the credits would have rolled. Bobby Driscoll. For a stretch of years, he was Disney's emblem of boyhood. Wide-eyed in Treasure Island, eternal in Peter Pan, the studio orbiting a single child's face as if it were its own North Star. That kind of attention wraps itself around a person, promising forever and meaning for now. When the mirror changed, features sharpening, acne arriving, the system that had built him didn't have a place for the new version. Casting calls thinned. The welcome mat turned over. The contrast between indispensable and not what we're looking for was stark enough to bruise. What followed wasn't a dramatic collapse so much as a lonely drift, scattered opportunities, wrong rooms, and the kind of quiet that amplifies every doubt. When survival turns into improvisation, people make choices with bad odds, and the town that once branded you ours looks away. Years later, the most famous boy in the room was found without a name, buried without fanfare, identified only after the fact. It's hard to square the soaring myth of Peter Pan with a city that walked past him on the street. His story hurts because it uncloaks how conditional the love can be. Posters and premieres suggest belonging. The business model is closer to rental. Bobby didn't vanish on his own. He was rendered invisible by an industry that didn't know what to do with a face that had grown up. The lesson isn't sentimental, it's structural. When your value is your childhood, time itself becomes the antagonist. Margaret O'Brien. She could pull tears like a magician pulls scarves. Clean, convincing, endless. And with that gift she walked into rooms full of adults and became the center of gravity. Awards arrived early, so did expectations. More roles, more vulnerability on cue, more versions of the same child that audiences already loved. Most people try to chase that feeling until the chase does the breaking. Margaret did something quietly radical instead. She measured the cost and set a limit. The migration from child fame to adult work is usually a scramble, full of compromises and small public humiliations. She sidestepped the scramble. There were no messy headlines to feed on, no grand declarations of reinvention, just a graceful resizing of life, family, privacy, community, and the occasional festival appearance that reminded everyone she'd been formidable from the start. The absence of scandal isn't a lack of story, it's the point of this one. What lingers isn't a cautionary tale, it's a template. She didn't disappear because she failed. She stepped back because she could, choosing a life calibrated to sanity rather than the market's appetite. In a genre of biographies that too often end in fire, her arc closes like a well-made door, quietly, securely, with the light still on inside. Claude Jarman Jr. He arrived with a kind of debut that bends history, an astonishing turn in the yearling that made audiences feel they were watching truth rather than performance. Studios lined up to reproduce the moment. Magazines tried to fix him in amber as the kid who could break your heart on cue, but instead of orbiting the same sun forever, he stepped off the track. He finished school, chose classrooms and quiet over constant makeup chairs, and learned to like the feeling of walking down a street where nobody expects anything from you but yourself. What looked from the outside like fading was, from the inside, a widening. Service, studies, and these odd little crossroads where his love of film met his refusal to be consumed by it, programming festivals, championing projects, standing at the lectern instead of the mark. He didn't treat his childhood fame like a peak to defend. He treated it like a gift to steward, a door that opened into the larger house of culture rather than a trap disguised as a throne room. That's the real plot twist. He didn't disappear into bitterness or nostalgia. He redirected the spotlight so it illuminated other people's work, other stories, other chances. The child actor became the adult custodian, and in that reversible lens you can see what longevity actually means. A career not as a single bright flare, but as a long attentive light. Scotty Beckett. He wore that sideways cap like a promise, a little comet streaking through our gang with timing older than his years. Casting directors loved him because the audience loved him first, and for a while the path felt effortless, bit parts turning into better parts, the kid version of Legends giving way to his own name on the card. Then life, which never consults the call sheet, rewrote the plan, loss shook the floorboards and the easy laughs curdled into something sharper at the edges. The years after read like a series of narrow corridors, pills to quiet the noise, headlines when the nights went wrong, the exhausting math of one more chance. He wasn't a punchline, he was a person navigating a town that treats vulnerability as a prop until it becomes a problem. The distance between the set where everyone knows your mark and a morning where no one picks up the phone is shorter than anyone thinks, and he traveled it too fast. What remains is an ache and a lesson. Early charm is not armor, and talent is not a treatment plan. He needed a net, not nostalgia, steadier shoulders, not brighter lights. We remember the sparkle because it was real. We should also remember the cost, because that was real too, and because the kids who come after him are still learning the difference between applause and help. Freddie Bartholomew. He arrived in Hollywood polished like a jewel, precise diction, luminous eyes, a poise that made adults lean forward, and for a few glorious years he seemed inevitable. David Copperfield. Little Lord Fauntleroy. The camera drinking in the calm confidence that made audiences feel both protective and proud. But success has a long tail, and his trailed into courtrooms where childhood earnings and adult authority collided, each hearing turning yesterday's applause into today's paperwork. What the industry couldn't write for him, he wrote for himself. When the roles thinned and the public's appetite shifted, he didn't stand on the dock waving at the departing ship. He walked inland and learned new trades, the grammar of business, the cadence of meetings, the art of persuading clients who don't send fan mail but do send checks. The same discipline that made him look effortless on screen translated into competence off it, and competence, it turns out, is a more reliable co-star than fame. His disappearance from marquees wasn't an erasure, it was a reframing. He found a life where being former anything didn't matter, where the measure of a day had nothing to do with opening weekends. If you want a map out of the machine that doesn't rely on scandal or reinvention theater, here it is: skills over headlines, work over wistfulness, identity anchored to something no camera can take away. Jackie Coogan. Before Hollywood even knew how to market childhood at scale, he proved it could be done. His face on posters, toys, and pantry shelves, his performances turning silent film sentiment into something that felt universal. The world called him a wonder, the studios called him essential, and adults around him learned that a child's charm could be converted into adult-sized money. By the time he reached the age when most kids are just figuring themselves out, he had already been a global industry. Then came the moment that revealed how lopsided the business really was. When he tried to claim the fortune he had earned, he found the accounts empty, the explanations slippery, and the law ill-equipped to imagine a minor as the principal laborer in a family enterprise. The courtroom fight didn't rewind the spending or fix the past, but it did something bigger than headlines. It forced the state to acknowledge that talent can arrive before legal adulthood, and that the money must be guarded accordingly. That's why his disappearance from the marquee is a misread. He didn't vanish, he transformed into a precedent. The Coogan law became a lockbox for kids who came after, a paper shield against the old assumption that parents always know best when fame collides with finance. Decades later, another generation discovered him as Uncle Fester and thought they were meeting him for the first time. In a way, they were, meeting the adult whose childhood had rewritten the rules. Shirley Temple. She was the country's pressure valve during hard years, a small figure with tap shoes and impossible composure, proof that brightness could be manufactured on demand and sold by the real. No one has ever quite replicated that blend of timing, talent, and cultural need. The curls were branding, but the steel underneath was real. If childhood fame is a furnace, she learned early how to step in without burning, and more importantly, how to step back out. The great illusion about child stardom is that the camera's affection can be stretched endlessly across adolescence and into adulthood. She didn't try to stretch it. She read the room, read herself, and chose a different stage where the applause isn't the point. Public service, diplomacy, the disciplined patience of policy work. In that arena, charisma is useful but not decisive. Preparation is. She put in the work, mastered the brief, and showed that the same focus that hits a mark at age 6 can anchor a negotiation decades later. So when people say she disappeared, what they really mean is that she stopped asking the same audience for permission to grow. She didn't chase the dwindling novelty of a former child superstar. She built a second identity that didn't depend on nostalgia at all. The lesson is quiet and stubborn. The best second acts aren't louder, they're truer, and they answer to purposes that outlast a spotlight. Tommy Rettig. Millions knew him as the boy whose best friend was a heroic collie, a weekly ritual of rescue and reassurance that felt like the country talking to itself. That kind of identification can feel like a hug and a handcuff at once, comforting while you're small, constricting as you grow. He sensed it early. Rather than let the role elongate into a life sentence, he asked for release and stepped into the uncertain air that follows a hit. Fewer calls, smaller chances, the long shadow of a character people refuse to let go. There's an unglamorous middle space many former child actors occupy, and he walked it. Missteps, lessons, and an eventual realization that belonging didn't have to come from a casting office. He pivoted toward computers when that meant curiosity more than cachet, teaching himself the grammar of systems that reward thoroughness and clear thinking. The audience changed from households to colleagues. The feedback changed from fan mail to compilers that either accept your logic or don't. From the outside, that looks like vanishing. From the inside, it feels like accuracy, matching who you are with the work that fits. He didn't abandon storytelling. He moved to a language where the story is a database schema, and the happy ending is code that runs without breaking. In a town addicted to visible comebacks, his finest act was choosing a future that didn't need to be witnessed to be real. Baby Peggy. Diana Sarah Carey. She was the silent era's tiny workhorse, a 5-year-old professional carrying features and churning out shorts like a studio unto herself. The camera loved the clarity of her face, the instant legibility of joy, fear, mischief, and the adults loved the way that legibility turned into ticket stubs and licensing deals. But industry adoration in that era often meant industrial conditions, long days, risky setups, and a pace that treated childhood as a renewable resource. When the market shifted and a family feud closed doors, the machine simply moved on, leaving a child who had already lived a career before first grade. What came next was survival in practical clothes. The money had evaporated, the spotlight had wandered, and a girl who had been famous enough to sell milk now found herself starting again under a different name. She read, thought, and reconstructed her identity outside the grammar of studios, marriage, clerical jobs, the slow gathering of perspective that only distance grants. In that space, the past began to look less like a loss and more like an archive, painful in places, priceless in others, always instructive. Then she did something almost no former child star does. She took authorship of the story that once threatened to erase her. As Diana Sarah Carey, she wrote, researched, and advocated, placing little hands back onto the levers of their own history. Her disappearance wasn't an exit wound, it was a door to a longer, steadier life, and a vantage point from which she could tell the truth about what it cost and what it taught. Kevin Corcoran. Moochie was the kind of role that sticks to memory like a song, freckled, quick, and unembarrassed by earnestness. He seemed designed for that late 1950s Disney wavelength where small adventures made big hearts feel seen. The danger of such a perfect fit is that the town keeps trying to resize you to the original pattern. Kevin read that pattern early and stepped to the side before it stiffened into a cast, trading center frame for the call sheet's spine. Behind the camera, he found the craft that rarely gets headlines but quietly keeps a set alive, breaking down pages, sequencing days, moving an army one scene at a time without losing kindness or focus. Assistant director, producer, steady hand. The jobs that reward stamina over spectacle and make other people's performances possible. The audience shrank from millions to crews, but the feedback got sharper. Was the day made? Did the shot cut? Did the team trust you enough to move faster tomorrow? That's why calling his later years a disappearance misses the point. He didn't blink out, he changed disciplines. Childhood fame gave him early training in rhythm and attention. Adulthood turned those into leadership. When he finally left us, he carried two legacies, one on film, one in the muscle memory of crews who knew what it meant to have him running the floor. The poster fades, the professionalism doesn't. Jay North. America met him in a striped shirt and overalls, and mistook the smile for a whole life. Dennis the Menace was a national ritual, a weekly reminder that mischief could be cute, repairable, and wrapped in a bow by the final scene. Off-set, the pressures were harsher and the guardians stricter, a private regime of control that turned the work into a maze and childhood into a performance that didn't end when the director said cut. The gap between the country's laughter and a boy's lived reality is the kind of silence that echoes for decades. When the series ended, the usual crossroads appeared, typecasting on one side, reinvention on the other, but he had to walk them carrying weight most peers didn't. He tried new roles, tried other paths entirely, and eventually stepped into work that measured him by effort rather than image. Along the way, he found language for the past, naming what had happened with a clarity that refused both self-pity and denial. It's hard to overstate how much that costs and how much it gives to those still inside the machine. So no, he didn't vanish. He survived, spoke, and kept going. Unflashy verbs that rarely make headlines and yet form the backbone of a real life. The boy the audience wanted to keep forever became a man who kept himself, and in the end, that's the only retention that matters. Martin Stephens. He walked through two haunting roles, Village of the Damned and The Innocents, with an eerie stillness that adults struggle to fake. The camera read his face like a lighthouse reads fog, calm, exact, and a little otherworldly. Then, before the town could reduce him to a single expression forever, he stepped off the carousel. He chose exams over auditions, projects over press, and a profession where blueprints, not billboards, decide if you did the job well. From the outside, that looks like absence. From the inside, it's relief. He let the films keep their chill while he kept his privacy, a trade most performers wish they'd learned to make sooner. The work remains, always one late-night rewatch away, yet the person is allowed to be ordinary, which is the rarest outcome of all. Mystery sells, but peace sustains. Bonita Granville. On screen, she specialized in heat, early Oscar recognition, a razor-edged turn in These Three, then the brisk confidence of Nancy Drew. Off-screen, she studied leverage. When the spotlight began to strobe, she did not chase it, she redirected it, marrying audacity to business sense and stepping into rooms where deals are cast and futures get budgeted. The former prodigy became the person who greenlit other people's moments. That's not disappearance, that's elevation. She converted reputation into ownership and youth into equity, proving that the smartest sequel to childhood fame is not nostalgia, it's power with a pen. The performances endure, but the lasting legacy is structural. Shows produced, ventures launched, an example for any young actor who suspects their sharpest line might be in a contract, not a script. We call it disappearing because the camera loses sight of them. They call it living because the rest of their life finally gets room to grow. Across these 15 stories, the pattern isn't a single arc. It's 4 recurring paths. The clean exit that protects a self, the ejection that exposes how conditional the market's love can be, the abrupt ending that reminds us chance outruns talent, and the reinvention that builds a second identity no poster can contain. Fame makes a loud first act. Adulthood asks for quieter skills, boundaries, leverage, new languages, and the courage to be ordinary where no audience is watching. If there's a lesson for viewers, it's this. What looks like absence from our side of the screen is often presence on theirs. Children turning into adults with jobs, families, and unfilmed victories. And for the kids who come next, these lives sketch a map through the machine. Save what's yours, learn something sturdier than applause, name what hurt, and walk toward the work that fits. The movies keep their glow, the people keep their lives. That's not a vanishing act, that's the point.